Welcome to Pastor's Chat today. Well, we're looking at Psalm chapter 38. This is one of the penitential psalms where David is remembering his sin and confessing it. He's also asking the Lord to remember and forgive him as he comes and confesses his sins. And so we see here in this chapter some powerful things about the terrible consequences of sin. In James chapter 1 it says, "Then when lust hath conceived, it bringeth forth sin, and sin, when it is finished, it brings forth death." In Galatians we read, "Be not deceived, God is not mocked, for whatsoever man soweth, that shall he also reap. He that sows to the flesh shall of the flesh reap corruption, but he that sows to the Spirit shall of the Spirit reap life everlasting." Sin has its consequences. And in this chapter, David is admitting that he has sinned, and he is dealing with the consequences in so many different ways. And David is asking God to help him as he complains to God in this penitential psalm. So let's read verses 1 through 8, and I hope you feel David's pain. Now, remember, David was a man after God's own heart. David was a man of tremendous, wonderful integrity, but David sinned. He failed, and God exposed that sin for all to see and to know about even today. My friend, we're not perfect, and we might fall, but remember Psalm 37, though the righteous man falls, he will rise again. Why? Because God forgives and lifts us up. And David then writes psalms like this that we can relate to as we suffer the consequence of our sin and turn to the Lord for mercy and for help. So I hope this chapter is an encouragement to you in two ways. One, don't sin. Stay away from it. Go as far from it as you can. Abstain from the very appearance of evil. And then secondly, if you have sinned and you have failed in certain areas of your life, remember, God is a merciful God, and in his wrath, Habakkuk cried out, "Lord, remember mercy." And so let's do that today as we look at this chapter, Psalm 38. "For, O Lord, do not rebuke me in your wrath, nor chasten me in your hot displeasure. For your arrows have pierced me deeply, and your hand presses me down. There is no soundness in my flesh because of your anger, nor any health in my bones because of my sin. For my iniquities have gone over my head like a heavy burden. They're too heavy for me. My wounds are foul and festering because of my foolishness. I am troubled. I am bowed down greatly. I go mourning all the day long, for my loins are filled with inflammation, and there is no soundness in my flesh. I am feeble and severely broken. I groan because of the turmoil of my heart." And so you see, David's heart is broken. David's heart is broken over his sin and what he's experiencing. But not only that, his body is broken. He has a fever, it sounds like. And then he goes from very high fever to maybe chills, and he's numb with cold. I'm not sure all that he experienced. There was inflammation he talks about in this chapter. It talks about that he goes mourning all the day long. In other words, he's like a person at a funeral, groaning and moaning because of the tragic consequence, physically, even of his sin in this case. Now, some of these pains might have come from wounds I thought about he might have incurred as he was fighting in so many battles. But for sure, he's speaking of the fact that he has sinned, he's been foolish, and he's suffering the chastening hand of God upon him. Not a good place to be. And so David's first looking at himself, and he understands that he is experiencing sin's painfulness. And that's the first thing maybe we could do and maybe should do as we deal with our sin, asking God to help us and forgive us and know that he will be there to help us through. Read these verses again and again, and I trust that you will trust the Lord to help you wherever you're at today for the glory of God. Take care. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.